Miss Juanita, we are live. How are
Yes,
you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm a little nervous, but I got all pretty for you today, Miss Juanita. I said,
Oh, thank you. You're always pretty.
I got
You
up.
are always
I was
pretty.
actually in my pajamas about 30 minutes ago. I was in my
I won't tell you what I had on.
pajamas. So, for folks that are watching, apologies for being late. I don't know. I've been moving a little bit slow, y'all, just kind of in slow motion, but we are here. If you're joining us, thank you so much for joining us. It's Jerlene, and I'm live on a Wednesday.
Yay!
So this will be my last dialogue of a little feature talk of the town for the year. And I just wanted to kind of just, first of all, just say thank you to people who have been supporting this experiment. This has definitely been an experiment this year that just started with the dialogue with Dr. Alex J. Norman. And he encouraged me to keep it going. So I'm keeping it going. And this, I'm going to end today with a conversation about grief. I posted a story earlier today, lots of responses. Thank you. That was part of my mourning and my grieving. I'm not finished, got a long way to go. But I wanted, today's guest is Miss Juanita Matthews. She is the executive director of Springs of Hope Grief Center. She is an author, she's a minister, and a life coach. And I wanted to share with people how I met Miss Juanita before I turn it over to her to tell us a little bit about herself. So I met Miss Juanita through the American Business Women Association, Diamonds of South Bay. So I'm turning over to you, Miss Juanita.
Okay, so good afternoon, and thank you, Jerlene. You are so beautiful, and you look good in red. I appreciate being here. I appreciate this time. I appreciate this space. And again, my name is Juanita Matthews, and I am the executive director at Springs of Hope Grief Care Center, located in the beautiful city of Long Beach. We have been in we've been established for 11 years in the city. Been doing what we do for longer than that. But we help families, individuals, small groups of people, organizations work through the grieving process. We help people and we work with families that have been impacted by death and loss and major life changes, because there are many things that cause grief. And so we've been able to walk with, cry with, pray with, encourage people through the process and let people know that there is hope, that if you submit to the process and if you believe that you can get hope, then we'll help you walk through the painful aspects of the process. And it's been a blessing to me to be able to help others, because in helping others, I've been helped. Every time you give to someone else, it's given back to you. And so that's part of what I've enjoyed over the years. We're a grassroots organization. We are simple. We are faith-based. I tell anybody, you cannot go through tragedy and come out healthy without without God's help. So we are faith-based. I am a minister of the gospel. I don't shy away from that. It's where I got my help when we walk through the tragedies of life, and the only way to walk successfully through tragedy and to get to the place of triumph is to stay in the arms of the good shepherd. And so we are based on uh, the principles of faith.
So
The other thing I want to say about Springs of Hope is that we meet people where they are. We try to provide a space that's laced with God's grace. And so we let people be who they are. And when they come to us, they always, 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 no matter what brought them to us, they always leave with hope.
So, Miss Juanita, when we were talking, well, a couple things. I know we're going to talk a little bit about how to manage grief during this time. And for people who are watching, if you have a story that you would like to share on grief, or you would like to be part of this dialogue, I am going to share a link where you can join in on this call. I'm going to share it in a few minutes with people, so that if you want to get in on this conversation and have a direct dialogue with Miss Juanita, I'm going to be opening that up. But before we do that, Miss Juanita, so you started this organization, this ministry, out of your own grief and mourning. Would you like to share with people more about that? I know right now we're grieving in the time of COVID, and there's so much that's going on. From, I know we're grieving death due to COVID. We're grieving deaths that are not COVID related, but we're not able to mourn with our families right now. We're grieving being able to be with people, or maybe the loss of a job. So grief comes in many forms, yet out of your grief, you birth Springs of Hope. Can you share with us your story?
Well, it started many years ago. My first brush with engagement with death was the tragic death of my nephew, Ron Settles, was killed in Signal Hill many years ago, almost 40 years ago, by the police there. And it was the first case of the chokehold that was out. The chokehold was outlawed, and so Ron was my sister's only son, and my sister and brother-in-law's only son, and so when that first death occurs in your family, it was devastating to us. It was devastating. It devastated my sister. It devastated all of us. We were actually at celebrating my husband's birthday at the time we got the call. And so to shift from celebrating to facing a tragedy, it was quite devastating for us. And so that was the first my first introduction with death in my family. And so it started there. And then several years later, my sister passed away, his mother, and I believe she died of a broken heart. And I'm mentioning that because it all leads to where we are now. I Several years later, like I said, we experienced the death of my parents, my mother, and then my father, and then um and then let me see, I'm trying to think of them in sequence. Anyway, our lives have been laced with loss, some of them tragic. And so coming away from that, it was difficult for me and for us to find the help that we needed at the time. And so it brings me to 92, when my son and his children were killed, were murdered. It brings me to that. It was as though the rug of life had been snatched from under us. And so there was little help available to me as a mother who lost a child and grandchildren. There was little help to my husband, who also had suffered the same loss. But because men grieve differently, fathers grieve differently than mothers, is why I kind of separated that. So there was little help for us. I'm sure there was some out there somewhere, but it wasn't in our sphere. It wasn't where we lived. And so we sought help through workshops, through through the church, through other organizations that were uh, presenting grief care and grief workshops. I attended as many as I could. And then as I began to embrace what they were teaching, some of the things that I was learning, then I started to present the same workshops myself. And so um, I honestly believe that because there was nothing or little for me out there at the time, I embraced the idea and the thought that I could help somebody else. And it seemed like the minute I sought to help another mother know that she was not going to lose her mind, it seemed to bring healing to me. And so it brings me where we are today, where we've been. We've been in a horrible place. We've been in some dark places. A grief is a dark place when you don't have the help that you need. And at the same time, through faith in Christ, through faith in God, Jesus is the light that people need when they enter a dark place. And so that's been a basis and a source of constant help and hope and healing for me. And so I tend to give others what worked for me. My family, back to my family, my son and his children were killed on Mother's Day. And so that was like a double whammy for us. It was like a double, it was double hurt, double pain, double everything. And so it was a very difficult situation. However, we live and I live today to testify to the grace that can be provided for another person to walk through this process. I know that it works. If you stay close to God, he will carry you through the process. If he brings you to it, he'll carry you through it. But we have to let him.
So when we were talking yesterday, or in planning for today, I was asking you a question around grief and mourning. And in this, for those of us who are used to mourning in a certain way, COVID has definitely prevented that from happening. And, we know part of that mourning is part of that grief, or that mourning traditions are part of our grieving process. What do you see happening now with people? Like what do you see happening now? And what do you recommend for people who are grieving during this time period when we're no longer able to mourn in our regular traditions prior to COVID?
One of the things that I encourage people to do is talk about it. Stay close to the people that you're close to, if that makes any sense. Stay connected. Stay connected to positive people. Stay connected to people who can provide some positive motivation or inspiration in your life. Stay in touch with, if you don't have a daily devotional or a daily meditation, grab one. There's innumerable help on the internet. There's so many sources now that are available that were not available years ago. And in the COVID situation, we're inside. We're encouraged to stay home. There's help available. We all have, many people have family. Many people have friends. If you have a pastor, a church, it's a good network, a good source of help. But stay connected to positive inspiration and motivation.
Well, on that, I mean, what do you recommend for people who don't have that network, that don't have what they would call a church home or whatever? Because the reality is that people don't. So how are
Mhm.
people to seek out and get support and move forward in this when they don't have um, that network? And also in that, I mean, with especially with churches not being able to gather the way that they've traditionally gathered, again due to COVID, um, it's how are people just even I don't know, like for me it how do you keep going? How do you get through?
Well, the 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 thing I would say is that every church is that I know of now, or many churches are global, many churches are online, many churches are on Facebook, many churches are on YouTube. So if you can stay plugged in that way, get connected that way. Some churches have prayer lines that are it's they are they don't there's no charge. I'm trying to say free conference calling. I couldn't think of that. Free conference call, free conference call prayer lines. There's a plethora of things that of ways that people can stay connected, but the main thing is find a way to stay connected. Stay connected any way you can. And also, we're available. You can call us by phone. Uh, somebody will always get back to you if we're not there when you call. You can email us. We will definitely get back to you because this is where my heart is. There are so many people that are grieving. There's so many people that are hurting right now and need help, just need a word of encouragement. Um, and so that's what we do. We're here, we care, and we're here.
Mhm.
And if you call us, we'll be there for you.
Um,
That's the the thing that I can say right now.
mhm, mhm. Um, I mean, also, I think we'd also kind of had the conversation as well on just on grief and how many of us have not
Mhm.
been taught to grieve properly. I mean, if there's a such thing as grieving properly. Um, can you just talk to us more about what that means to grieve and mourn? And I mean, one, you said, of course, talk about it, but what is it like? What does it really mean? Because I shared my story with you that in a couple things that something I just heard you say, you shared that a family member, you felt that they died of heartbreak. Um, my mother,
Mhm.
my mother died the day she found out her mother died. And so when I think about heartbreak, I really believe that
Mhm.
heartbreak can kill. Um,
Mhm.
so for me, that's real. And my mother died days before Mother's Day. So for many years, Mother's Day was a challenging day for me. Um,
Right.
so
Mhm.
okay, I kind of was losing myself for a minute. Um,
Uh-huh.
I did not realize until, or no, I can't say I realized. It was not brought to my attention until I was in my mid 30s that I had never
Mhm.
grieved the losses of my life.
Mhm.
And I grew up in the church. I grew up in a Southern Baptist church, and it was never anything that was actually taught to us. I mean, we'd be told different things like hold to his hand, God unchanging hand, but we were not told how to do that or what that meant. And we would have the funeral services and the repasses, and then everyone would go home. So can you share like what does it look like to actually grieve? I mean, like I said just now, for me as an adult that have suffered many losses, am I learning to grieve now? So what does grief look like, or mourning look like?
Okay, grief is the normal, healthy process that the body goes through when it has been um, hit with a major life change. That's a simplified version. Mourning is the expression of that grief. How you bring it out, how you express it. Some people talk about it. Some people scream it out. Some people cry it out. Everybody deals with grief differently. And so, but mainly what I didn't realize is that grief was a process. I didn't know and or understand any of it. I just knew I was hurting. I just knew my heart was broken. I just knew I had this pain in my body that I knew was brought on by the death of my children and my son and his children. I just knew that that pain was in my body and it was real. What I did not know at the time was that it was the beginning of a process, and that eventually that pain would be healed, that eventually that pain would go away. Because in the moment, it seemed like a forever, like it's never going to go away. And so grief for me looked like that pain in my body. It looked like having 1,000 thoughts in my head at one time. And I have a really great description of I call it the grief ball, or the ball of confusion. And it's a perfect description or visual of grief inside the body, inside the mind, inside the head. Because I couldn't think straight. And so that's what it looked like for me. I couldn't perform simple tasks. I love to cook. I could not cook a meal for a certain period of time. And so that's what it looked like for me. It was difficult to do simple things. And so, I know my thinking was off, because the scariest thing that ever happened to me during that time is getting in my car, driving somewhere, and forgetting where I was going. And so I knew that I was in trouble and I needed some help and I needed to talk to somebody. But what I didn't know is that that was temporary and it was part of the process. And that eventually, if I got the help that I needed, and if I talked it out with the right people, that I could eventually walk it out in a healthy way and live it out in a healthy way.
At what point did you at what point did you realize you needed to get some support? Like, when did you say, Juanita, I need some help?
Well, I realized it immediately, because I realized it immediately that I needed some help. Way back in the 80s, when Ron passed away, we were so involved in, because his death created, we did marches, it was a journey for justice. And so we were all engrossed in that justice pursuit. And so that took years, and it was a long and laborious process, but it wasn't my process. I was helping my sister through the process, and without any tools. We just had the love of family. We had the love of friends. We had the love of community. And those are big things also that will help you through the process. But we didn't have we didn't have the tools at that time, because our focus we were focused in a different direction. We were focused on justice. We were focused on several things. We were focused on clearing his name, and the fact that he was not on drugs, that he did not kill himself. We were focused on that. And so that took our energy. We focused our energy in that direction. And so it wasn't until toward the end of that court situation that we were able to focus on the personal situations, our personal grief, our personal feelings, and how we were dealing with it. But we came together often. It was the love of family, the love of friends, the love of people that surrounded us that was helpful at that time.
So, Miss Wani, I'm gonna come back to the journey for justice part because I think it's so relevant to where we are right now, coming out of the uprisings and the different injustices that we're experiencing. That's compounding our grief. So I'm gonna come back to that. But I had wanted to if you're watching, and I don't know if you just heard what Miss Juanita, where she talked about this ball of confusion, short-term memory loss. Like I said, I've done that where I've gotten in my car and completely forgot where I was going. But in the challenges of doing simple things. If you're experiencing some kind of loss in your life right now, I mean, like Miss Juanita, she said that was the first part of her grieving process, and she wasn't even, she became aware of it and addresses. But if you're experiencing that, you may be experiencing grief. Like I said, I know for myself personally, I didn't even, it's like, how do you grieve when we're always on the go, 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 go? But I wanted to share some of the comments that have come in. One of the comment from, let's see if I can show this here. From Alyssa Taylor. Compounded grief is real. It can knock you off your feet. For me, my faith in God is what has sustained me and continues to help me, continues to hold me together. I know Miss Alyssa lost her husband. I think it's been over a year now. And she definitely, it has been, I know, an inspiration to myself and others in the community, and how she's been able to continue to serve others during her time of grief. Someone asked a question. I'm
so glad to see her name.
I was trying to get her. I was trying to actually get Miss Alyssa to join us this morning.
Okay.
Louisa, what is recommended to those that are struggling with their faith? I mean, again, it kind of goes to me thinking about what about those who don't have a church home or that network or whatever? Like how do we continue to support and sustain them through their grief? And here this asks, how about someone struggling with their faith?
So call us. We're here to help you. We're here to help you, Lucia.
All right. If you heard that, Juanita said call. I'll post her number and information again. Let's see, just kind of bouncing through here. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the journey for justice, because this, again, speaking of the time that we're in right now, this time of COVID. So how...
Jerlene, before you do that, may I address Lucia?
Yes.
Quickly. Yes. Number one, I've worked with people who were mad at God. And what made me go back is reading the word struggling with your faith. People struggle with faith when they're angry at God, when they constantly asking why, constantly asking, saying I should have done this or I should have done that. Those things are normal. I just wanted to say that those things are normal, and it's okay to be angry with God as long as you don't stay angry too long, because He can help you like no one else can. And so, faith. Go ahead.
Right. I was just going to share another comment after you finished.
Faith is real, and faith is necessary. Faith, we can't make it without faith in this world. Faith in God, it makes a difference. It's a power. It's a power in your life that you can't necessarily explain, but it's very real. It's very real. Faith in God is a power in your life that you can't live without. And I'll just leave it at that. Give us a call at the Grief Center, at the Grief Care Center, and we'll work with you, Lucia. Thank you for that question.
So here's another comment, and this is a little little bit of a different direction.
Mhm.
And it says, on grieving, accepting the already made agreement of transitioning. Um, Again, kind of going back to where when we talk about those of us who believe in a higher entity, believe in God, we talk about that there's a place that we transition to. Yet the one thing that I know for me is um, we prepare for and we plan for and we talk about this transitioning, but when death comes, all of a sudden it's like this surprise to us. um how does that, how do we maneuver through that? Like, I don't know, it seems like it adds to the grieving process. It's almost like I don't know, like that's always been a challenge for me. I can't even articulate it.
I'm I'm not sure what the question was.
How do we, it kind of going back to what we've been taught and believe, and when we transition on, yet we hold on. Like, where is that line of believing that though our relatives, our loved ones have transitioned to a better place? Like, where is that come into our grieving process? Because it seems like sometimes like we talk about it, but then we forget it.
Right. Well, it's one of the things that makes me say, continue the conversation. Talk about how you feel. Talk about, it's a constant process of three things for me, of assessing, acknowledging, and accepting. Every situation that you face, even every day, you got to assess where you are, how you feel, and then you got to acknowledge that, because in that process of assessing and acknowledging, then you can accept, okay, today, this is what color I am. I also use colors at the Hope Center. Sometimes I'll ask a question to a client, what color are you today? And we have the colors already. Gray, are you gray? Are you blue? What color are you today? What color is your grief today? Or what is your grief today? And so it's the spark for a conversation. And then we develop um, tools from there. But just having people talk about it, and like you said, until you started to talk about it, you didn't even realize you were grieving. I have so many people that say that to me. I didn't know I needed help. I didn't know I was grieving, because it's something that we don't talk about. Um, and it's one of the reasons why I love this work that I never knew I'd be involved in, is because in the church especially, we use certain cliches and scriptures to cover and blanket things that need to be singled out and handled in an individual way. And so part of my mandate, or part of my life's work, is to help educate people and help people to have those courageous conversations around grief.
So something you said, like, what is your grief today? If you're watching right now, and you would like to share your story or to talk directly with Miss Juanita, I put a link in the comments. All you got to do is click on it and follow directions, and it'll bring you here to join us live in person. But what is your grief today? One of the reasons really wanted to have this conversation is not just because of the conversation around grief, around death and loss of life, but just in general about how are we grieving in the time of COVID? Are you grieving the loss of a job, maybe the loss of a home, grieving just the old normal that we used to have. If you would like to like join us and be part of this conversation and share your grief story, even share how you've been able to manage daily. I know for me personally, it's been having the conversation. It's been talking about how I'm
Mhm.
feeling. Miss
Uh-huh.
Juanita, what kind of tips and recommendations do you have for people that are just grieving, whatever it is? What?
Well, the other thing that I wanted to mention is that one that people don't talk much about, or at least haven't talked to me much about, is a doctor's diagnosis, um, or sons or daughters away in prison, um, sons or daughters out of the home, and you don't know where they are. There are so many things that cause grief that we don't talk about, and because we don't talk about, we continue to internalize those things, and Jerlene, that can make us sick if you continue to internalize those feelings, those thoughts that produce fear. They produce anxiety, they produce depression, they produce negative things that can negatively affect your health and your body. Okay,
I'm
I
sorry,
can't hear you.
I was on mute. Can you say that one more time?
Okay, I don't know if I can say it exactly, but I talked about other things that cause grief, like a doctor's diagnosis, a terminal illness, sons and daughters wayward. You don't know where they are. The parents don't know where they are. That's grievous to us. Another thing is sons and daughters that may be in prison. We can't, there's no contact with them. You don't know how they're doing. Those things cause grief as well. And there's so many other things that cause grief. The main thing is you just got to talk about it. You got to find an outlet, because if you internalize it forever, it goes nowhere, and
Mhm.
it can adversely affect the body.
And that's the
It can
part.
adversely affect you.
Tell us that part again. Tell us again what else grief does. Tell us that part again.
Well, it can cause anxiety. It can cause, and that involves fear and stress, and it can cause to uh, graduate into depression and despair, and many other things that actually work against being a healthy person. But talking about it, just bringing it to the table, somebody can direct you to a place where you can get some help.
Thank you. Like the one thing that like the anxiety, the fear, the stress,
Yeah.
those are things that impacts our body. We talk about COVID, and they talk about the underlying health issues, specifically around people of color and Black people, and they talk about heart disease and high blood pressure. These are things that affect that. These are things that contribute to that: the anxiety, the
Mhm.
fear, the stress, and then the depression. Um,
Right.
what word would you give to somebody who's experiencing depression due to their mourning right now? Right now, again, it's the holiday season. This is a holiday like no other. We're not going to be surrounded by families. We're going to be by ourselves. There's going to be some people that's going to be by themselves. Like, how do you keep from? I used to call it the black hole. Like, how do you?
Right. Right.
And again, it ties back to grief. Like, what word would you
Right.
have for somebody?
I would say reach out. Even if you're alone, most people have a doctor. And even though some people can't go to the doctor, you can call the doctor. Um, in most healthcare situations now, they have nurse practitioners that will speak with you over the phone. Find a way, um, you know, find a way to reach out. That's your responsibility because you're the one who needs help. So find a way to get a 911. Find whatever your SOS is, and reach out for that. Reach out. Uh, a friend. Friends know other friends. People connect you with other people. And so the main thing is reach out. Let somebody know that you're hurting. Let somebody know that you're in a dark place. Let somebody know that you need some light. You need help turning on the light. Let somebody know. you know, you gotta let somebody know you're not alone, and then somebody can speak that word of faith to you, and help you turn the light on. It's imperative that you reach out. And there's three things about grief that I didn't say earlier, um, um, that I want to highlight now. Grief is painful, is awkward. I didn't talk about the awkwardness of it. People don't know what to say to you when you lose a loved one. There's a whole workshop that we do on things that we ought not to say to people. And
Mm.
then it's disruptive. It's always untimely.
And
It's
what was the
always
third?
untimely.
You said painful,
It's
awkward,
painful, it's awkward, and it's disruptive. It disrupts
disruptive.
your life. Disruptive.
Well, I see a future connection to talk about like that. I would love to have more dialogue about that awkwardness. I've been having that conversation
Yeah.
with people lately,
Mhm.
and I know I'm really mindful of how I respond to other people. Um,
Yeah, people don't know what to say to you. I'm
so
sorry.
as we get ready to wrap up, I wanted to bring up one thing: journey for justice. Um,
Okay.
what I witnessed throughout the last few things about the uprisings, um, people were out there and just going, um, uh, um, an action. They were in action against all the different things that have taken place. And the one thing that
Uh-huh.
always kind of frightened me was what happens when that's over with. And you had even stated in your journey for justice that you were marching and protesting against what
Mhm.
happened to Ron Settles. Coming out of that, how did you transition into the grieving process? And how do you recommend for people who've been in action, fighting, and all of a sudden the action stops? Like, what do you recommend for them as they begin the grieving process, or to be noticing that it's taking place?
Well, again, reach out because now you got to refocus on you.
Hmm.
You got to refocus on yourself and how you feel and how you're handling the day-to-day life, because it's an adjustment. You're in an adjustment period. And it's that same thing. You got to assess, acknowledge, and hopefully get to the place of acceptance. It's that constant three pronged activity over and over again until you come to the place where you say, okay, I'm okay with this. I'm not over it, but I'm getting through it, because I don't think we ever get over the loss of a child, the loss of a grandchild, the loss of a husband. We don't ever get over it. And I failed to mention my most recent loss, uh, Jerlene, is my husband passed away a year and a half ago. And so just getting through the losses of life every single day, I miss him. We were married for over 50 years. And so it's been a year and a half of adjustment. it's been a year and a half of processing through that grief. And so some days I'm strong and some days I'm not so strong. But the thing that I realized about 6 months ago is that I'm strong, but I'm fragile. Because you can be strong, your faith is strong, and yet I'm fragile in so many areas. But finding the balance in all of that is faith in God. Finding the balance.
Oh, if you're watching, and you're in need of support right now, maybe you're grieving something, maybe it's new grief, maybe it's old grief, you can learn more about Springs of Hope Grief Center. I posted the website link. Miss Juanita, okay, so this is a heavy conversation. Thank you for sharing yourself. Thank you for sharing your grieving process. One thing that, like we just said, we talked about the awkwardness. Like, what do you say when someone shares that they have lost a loved one? And when you shared that, I felt a loss for words for you. Good thing I don't wear makeup, y'all. That's why I don't wear makeup.
Thank you. Thank you for your
So I ask you, in those cases, what would you want someone to say to you in your time of grief? Like, what would bring you comfort for someone to say when you shared that you recently lost your husband? What would you want, or what would be, because something for me, and I was just sharing this, when people say, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and I go, "Well, what are you sorry for? It wasn't your fault."
Right.
Now,
Right.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry for your sadness, or I've like, please help. What would you want someone to say?
One of the things that I appreciate is when somebody says, "I'm giving you a hug right now. I want to give you a hug right now." That's one thing. Another one is, "I care. I care." And from someone else who's experienced a similar loss, to say, "I understand your pain. I understand. I understand when you share the loss of your mom. I understand that pain." To say, "I'm praying for you." Those are things. "I love you." Those are things that are comforting. Those are things that are helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And "I'm praying for you, and I'm going to keep you in prayer." Uh, um, Praying for your strength, and actually do that. But don't tell me, things that are not helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Earth has no sorrow. I mean, he's in a better place. That's not helpful.
Right.
What's helpful is to say, "I'm here for you and I care. I'm here and I care."
So for folks
Thank
that
you, Jerlene.
thank you. So for folks that are listening, if you have friends or family that's grieving, Miss Juanita gave some recommendations on how you can respond. I see a future opportunity to talk about this again. But before we close out, wanted to share a couple things. So I did post you see the link to her website. It's showing on the screen right now. Also, if you are in need of grief care, you can call the Springs of Hope Grief Care Center. The phone number is right there online, 562-473-2635, or you can send an email. Miss Juanita and her team will get that. Miss Juanita also has a book that we didn't get a chance to talk about. So maybe I need to get the book, read the book, and then we can have a full conversation about it.
That sounds good. That sounds good. Jerlene, I wanted to mention the Hope Table Talk.
Yes, that's
The
coming.
Hope
That's
Table.
coming. So let me try.
Okay.
So let me see if I can do this properly again, because I definitely did not do it. And I'm going to bring this up in just a moment. Let's see. Screen share. All right. Applicant Chrome tab. Titled. I don't know. Can people see that on their screen right now?
I see it.
All right.
Yeah, I see it.
Yes. So beginning, return in January, Springs of Hope will be having their Hope Table Talk. It is for share brief information about what that's all about, Miss Juanita.
Okay, if anybody is struggling with it and wants to participate in a support group, it's where we bring like-minded people together who can come and share around the table. We share tools, we share experiences, we share faith, and we share everything that you can imagine that would be helpful for you going through the grief process. And we're offering it in a virtual platform now. But you have to call the number to register so that we can get your emails and send you Zoom information. We use the Zoom platform, and so we need you to register.
So what I will be doing is I will make sure to share that out on my page with people. And like I said, there will be an opportunity for more conversation and more intimate dialogue about grief and the process of grief with Miss Juanita. Thank you, Miss Juanita, for joining us. Also, Springs of Hope Grief Center is a nonprofit organization. If you would like to support and sponsor the work of Springs of Hope to make sure that they're able to continue to serve people, I invite you to make a contribution. Unfortunately, there seems to be a technical difficulty with the donation page, but I'm going to share that as well on my page. But for now, I'm posting some information about how to reach Springs of Hope. Also, you can go through the website. There's an address on there. You can mail contributions. Right now, it's so essential and so important that we support our local nonprofits that are supporting the community and providing a service. So again, please, if you end of year people, you want some that tax deduction that I'm not sure many of us are going to get this year. And even if you just want to just make sure that you're like supporting someone's heart and then supporting someone's heart work, okay, please consider making a contribution to Springs of Hope Grief Center. I'll post more information on my page. Miss Juanita, do you have any last words for any of us?
Jerlene, thank you so much for this opportunity today. I'm so grateful to just get the word out that we are in the city, that we exist to help people. We invite people to the Grief Care Center to find hope. It's a place where we help people in the area of renewing the mind, refreshing the heart, and restoring the soul. That's basically it in a nutshell, what we do at the center. And I welcome anybody to just call us, check us out, let us know you need help, and we will be there for you. We care, and we will help you if we can. Thank you so much.
All right.
You're beautiful, and I love what you do.
Thank you. I'm